Prismatic evolution. Is it dropping down? Is it time to buy? Or can it go down even further? In this video, we're going to look through the top cards in Prismatic, see where we're at with the market, and is there any trends that are following the constant data of seeing, are they going to drop even more? Or is this time around the time to buy? Now, when it comes to Prismatic, the main thing you was looking for is either the Master Balls, which were insanely hard to collect, which kind of made the set that little bit more bulky to collect. The Pokeballs and Master Balls were always adding that level of value. Now, personally, I'm not necessarily a biggest fan of them. I do understand the Master Set collection of having them, and most definitely, if you do have all of them, it does look pretty cool to have the job lot. But even the reverse holos, I'm not necessarily a big fan of. When you've got these sorts of artworks coming in at the back with already a very premium price, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of kind of having that extra value to try and collect, especially when you're looking at an Umbreon Master Ball coming in at the levels that it did. Now, obviously, when it comes to anything Prismatic, we had SARs beyond belief. Everything was expensive, all the evolutions were difficult, and not only that, it was a very bad pull rate set, plus the fact that product was getting taken left, right, and center. Now, obviously, there's a few gold cards, there's the evolutions, and a lot of the SARs that really just get missed. So when you do look across the board of all of these and kind of look at the market and think the first page, we're already looking at a $32 market on the very first page with 4 cards a row. That is going to be an expensive set regardless. I believe the set is still coming in, I want to say at about $4,000, give or take. I believe that is going off the collector's value when it comes to it, because naturally it's going to be the best place that you're going to find the set, which does take a lot of data. And just as a right now live update, we're looking at 3.2. This was up at about $8,000 when the set first came out. So we're already seeing a massive decline in the set as well. We also see some of these illustration cards that have dropped tremendously, especially the Ogapons. They didn't really hit off massively. So personally, from a collector's point of view, I would definitely be trying to pick up a lot of these more cheaper cards. Again, you can kind of battle with yourself if you do want the Pokeball Master Ball reverses, or obviously do you just fancy to try and get one of each of the set. For me, I think that's more than enough to just get a complete set. Maybe you throw a few of the Pokeball Master Balls in if you've managed to open up some, but naturally keeping just one of each of the cards is more than enough for my personal pleasure. Plus then you will see a few of the natural kind of trainer SARs coming in there as well. And as we go further down, we've obviously got the Terrapagos EX Gold coming in at $9 now. Even when you do look at that across the list of what we had from the pricing prior, it most definitely was at a very top end value. To say that it, well, I say top end value, but you know what I mean. If you're thinking you're paying $25, or even if you take a few weeks after, $21 compared to now the $9, that is an incredible difference, which will make a massive value difference when you consider the 10, 20, 30, 40 cards making that same dip. Even when you do look at something like the Master Ball of Screamtail, for instance, there's not going to necessarily be a massive price jump, and some may go up and down, as you can see. We're holding around the same sort of level, and more than likely where you're going to see this jump more so than anything on a Master Ball would be on an evolution type of card. More than likely the Umbreon's going to be quite volatile, as the price was absolutely mental. But even when you do look at the Eevee, you think if you bought it within the first month, you're still looking at $51. That is absolutely crazy. Whereas you look now at the solid 10, it's why whenever we go through the sets, make sure you subscribe, we go through when to buy, when is to hold on, should you sell, should you invest in the set, should you then really just stay away from it for a little bit. Now, obviously, you can see that the kind of price inside of stuff is going down a little bit now, and most definitely staying roughly around the sort of same for the past month or so, because everybody's got that new shiny toy. Black and White came out. We obviously had Destined Rivals, Journey Together. We then have the Mega era coming in. It does mean that the need for this set is becoming less and less, and more than likely, the amount of product that is on the shelves is slowly going down in price and becoming more single based. And a lot of people are sick and tired of actually just doing the constant trying to open, especially with this set specifically. It was so difficult to pull anything. And just to look at another comparison, for instance, for a Leafeon, just to see the Master Ball levels of what we were reaching. Within the first month, we are still seeing $60 on a Leafeon Master Ball, then coming all the way down to 27. Like I say, sometimes holding off on these are very interesting. Again, taking a look, which is a little bit more difficult because the only other set prior to this one doing a Pokeball and Master Ball was looking in towards the Japanese set, which most definitely is similar but not similar at the same time. The levels of quantity and just the general cost per pack is a lot less, so it was very difficult to make that comparison. Whereas now looking at something like the black and white levels, we can kind of have a comparison for that, and Prismatic is going to do a very good job there. So if I go off the very first page and just going through a few of these relatively quickly, just seeing a few of them obviously taking that ups and downs, you can kind of see where Crispin kind of came in. He's obviously coming at a pretty decent value, very difficult to get, and to be honest, the kind of price difference I would imagine from like February to March would be just a clear amount of people that really struggled to even get anybody from this. I managed to get very, very lucky and got a Demigod pack from this with the Vaporeon, Flareon, and the Terrapagos. I opened up a fair few packs after, absolutely nothing. A couple of the trainers, more so than anything, a few EXs, but definitely no SARs following. So the set in itself was very difficult to try and get. And to be honest, I do like looking at the 1 year data now, looking a fair few months on, what we're looking 8 months on from when the release date was officially there. You can even see the Pikachu, and I like to normally go with a comparison of kind of like almost your start date of like that 126, seeing like a month or two in, just seeing the 78 here, and then we obviously do come down. It doesn't mean every single card will always come down. If I go and take this exact same formula and go to a Journey Together, that came down a lot quicker. If then we went to a really hype set, if we looked at something like the Pikachu, that peaked up, that went crazy to the moon and then dropped down. So the higher rating sort of card we get, which is always interesting. We did see this Terrapagos, and again, I've not sold it, and I probably should have got rid of it around about here at the top of the value. I've now kind of held on to the investment side of it and just kept it to my personal collection. It's one that I pulled. I have a cherished memory of getting a Demigod pack. It will take a very either lucrative price, which is not going to happen within the next few months, I can tell you that for free. But in general, it's kind of keeping in my collection of this is personally what I packed. So that is kind of going into my personal collection there as well. When you do look as well, when we kind of go down, we're kind of looking at the Pikachu Gold. We're seeing 162, 97, and right now is an NA, but we obviously went for that anyway. We then have the Iron Crown, which obviously is now coming in, I believe, at around about the 40 sort of mark. Obviously, we did go all the way up again. A lot of them did this. They started relatively simple when it comes to the normal SARs, and then they shot. They went crazy, and this is where that 7 to 8 grand came from, the valuation of the set, because everything was so expensive. Every single SAR, every single special illustration that you could get was sitting around that £100 mark, and I'm thinking, really? Like genuinely, can we get anything cheaper? And obviously now when we do look back at it and think, I'm so glad I didn't buy into any of them, because quite literally it would have been an absolute bloodbath trying to sell these off. Literally 84 coming down to 42. We then go into Iron Valiant, and I'm not necessarily even the massive fan here of this. And you can obviously see, take everything with that pinch of salt, because even though we look at this price, and to be honest, it's not came down that crazy amount, just look at the very little amount of sales that we've got going on here. It's not necessarily an incredible value sort of thing. And to be honest, you were probably better off buying this sooner. So it's always interesting to see the different ones. And some cards have it, some cards don't. Palafin, I just wasn't a fan of this card. It's just, it doesn't hit that vibe for me. And normally you kind of get that. Sometimes it's the specific Pokemon, it's the specific artwork or the specific artist that tend to give a level of almost, it's not necessarily respect to the card, but it gives it a foundation to build on. I know if I've got a Charizard here, it's either a Mega, it's a Shining, it's a special illustration, and that's going to do a moderate pull already. If then I was to go for a more kind of non-base, say I was going for a Charmeleon, but the artwork is stunning. sometimes you know that card could do quite well because of it. Whereas Palafin for me just wasn't that card, and you can kind of see the value dropping exponentially. Some of them I would suggest definitely holding off on till as well. Like for instance, this is a great artwork. I think Goldango has some of the beautiful artworks, especially in, I want to say it's Twilight. It might be Twilight or Temporal. The one with him kind of looking just more like the Cheez-It Man. Just incredible artwork. And in general, you can kind of see we're still coming down a little bit. And he's kind of held off on that 60. So, you know, he's at a decent level. We're not seeing him dropping all the way down to 30 and 20s. But he could still make a little bit of a decline as well. Raging Bolt being another interesting one. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of these kind of different artworks or different Pokemon when it comes to the Raikou Entei, but that comes from a more nostalgic point more so than necessarily the card. A lot of people might like the Walking Wake, the Raging Bolt, and is it Gouging Fire or something? I'm not necessarily the biggest one, but you know it's an alternative variation, so if you've got a Raikou collector, could be a chance to go and buy something that is Raikou based. It definitely fits in with that theme personally. We have the Blood Moon Ursaluna, lovely card in itself, very standard, nothing absolutely crazy, but we can kind of see the decline going on here. And to be honest, we probably could skip. Let's go to the evolutions here, because most of them I've already checked over are doing that same sort of level. Obviously with the Eevee, we're still sitting at a pretty penny. I wonder if my sign, we got 218 coming in, 231 2 weeks after, and then 110 currently. Interesting to see. It's not necessarily my biggest fan for this evolution as well. Well, this Eevee, in fact. I feel like the card work could have been better. I really do. And I'm not necessarily the biggest terrestrial fan. I don't think it resonates too much with the card, but I can kind of understand. The borders are exquisite. I must admit, they were a great touch and works really well with the evolutions. I think it just adds that pop of color, and I think that is a very nice artwork to say the least. Obviously, then we have like kind of this version of him. It's still coming in at 144. Did kind of start off at 170 all the way at 300 with obviously the Roaring Moon. Always going to be a fan favorite. And then we get on to the big hitters. These were kind of the prices now that we were looking at. They were just stupidly priced. Like, yes, Flareon and all the evolutions are a fantastic hit piece. There's a lot of evolution collectors, and I think they rid most definitely a lot of hype off the Evolving Skies set, which most definitely they will be doing every single time, I guarantee. Probably not during the Mega era, just because there is no Megas for them, but naturally as we see this kind of going down, I could see them potentially flatlining a little bit sooner, maybe hopefully sooner, and then kind of maybe rearing their head a little bit later. I think with evolutions, they're always an interesting one to go with, because when you do look at them, if you went down to, let's go down to the latest English sets, because the greatest comparison you can have right now is looking at the Evolving Skies. It's not necessarily a carbon copy, because they are slightly different with some of them, but it's most definitely interesting to see some of the price differences, because naturally these were kind of what they're made of. This is what we were kind of going for. And yes, we've got some other stuff in there as well, but when you do look at something like the Umbreon now, it had a massive price increase with this. It was absolutely nuts. You kind of saw that price really skyrocket quite up there from the 600 all the way up to the 1.2. Now, obviously, this will more than likely drop down a little bit. And yes, not every single card went crazy. If we look at, for instance, the Flare... Is there a Flareon? There isn't a Flareon in this one. It is the Glaceon. You look at this and necessarily, it doesn't hold that same sort of weight. Like the artwork in itself, if we look at this in comparison to the Glaceon within, where is it? That's Espeon. Where is my Glaceon? Did I even put the Glaceon in here? If we go for the Glaceon, let's go page 1. For Prismatic, I personally would always prefer to, in fact I had the Glaceon, didn't I? I must have knocked it off. If we go Glaceon here, you obviously could see it coming in. I personally much prefer the Evolving Skies one. Now, that is because the artwork is there. It's away from the terrestrial, but you can kind of see the difference in sort of price. Like, obviously, that took a massive jump up. Yes, the sales aren't necessarily crazy, but you still will find the data there that it will kind of have that kind of natural progression as we do go forward. And not every single card is crazy. You can see the hundreds here, and maybe that is where the tap out comes for Prismatic. Then obviously if you go into kind of the more kind of bigger versions, this is where the comparison potentially goes, because obviously the alternative art was obviously the new SAR. Now we can kind of see the drip dip down a little bit, so you almost had to pick the absolute peak, and hopefully you get the sale going. We saw it prior coming in at 200, then obviously we see the release of Prismatic, the hype in getting everything, and now the hype's drifting away. You can see the drop going. Now obviously we'll go and see potentially in a month's time, in 2, 3, 4 months time, even when a new evolution set comes out, does the hype come back? And most definitely all evolutions at the moment are the absolute same. They're dropping down massive prices. We're looking at a $200 difference for the Vaporeon. For the Espeon, sorry. For the Vaporeon, we're seeing from 369 down to 207. We see the Leafeon coming up again from a drop of 460 down to 205. It's absolutely nuts when you do look at all of them price differences and thinking, if you held on to a lot of these cards or bought the whole set, maybe the PSAs are a little bit different. We're kind of looking more towards an ungraded. We're seeing 200 losses on every single card. And I think the Moonbreon is always going to be an interesting one, as that started way up here. Now, that's not to say that this card doesn't go back the other way. We obviously saw with the kind of Moonbreon, that had that difference. It started at the 300 and started picking up prior to the evolution set. Yes, a little bit of hype once Prismatic started getting mentioned, especially because it was labeled an evolution set, and more than likely the next sell time realistically is going to be when the next evolution set comes out. So it's always picking your battles. We can kind of see this card now dropping from 1.5, yes, with the sales being very sporadic, all the way down under that grand mark. Now, like I say, PSAs are going to be totally different, but it is interesting to see where we're at with this set in general, because it is a set that is very premium. It's very difficult to pack anything, so I would suggest singles are the way forward. Now, the way I personally would approach anything when it comes to Prismatic would be start bottom up. I wouldn't necessarily be touching any of these cards with a barge pole, just in case they give us a new Prismatic box, which I believe the figure collection is coming to England soon. We then obviously could have more packs, more artworks. We saw 151 come out, the Blooming Water box. We saw that come out like a year and a half later. Prismatic is still going to be printed in boxes, in sets, maybe new products that we don't know about right now. So personally, I would kind of stay away from these at the moment, especially with their dropping kind of coming about. Maybe if you can go and pick one up and if you're trying to flip it for a profit, it's still not too difficult to do if you're obviously buying at 60, 70, 50, 60, 70, 80% and managing to get that 100 fix on it. That's fine. It's going to be a set that most definitely is still going to be quite liquid that you can get rid of. Maybe more towards the evolutions rather than necessarily like your Iron Hands or Valiants. But I'd say they're the cards that potentially you could take that risk on and possibly collect and hold on to. Now, for me, I would be looking kind of 30 and under, because at least then I know that, for instance, if I'm looking at the Sandy Shocks and I buy it for 26, 27, say I get a nice little deal on it, get a $2 cheap. If it goes down to the 10, 15 mark, which I don't think it will go all the way down, but it could potentially hit them sort of lows, I'm kind of okay losing like a $10 on it. If it's going for my personal collection, that's absolutely fine. I don't particularly want to buy a Sandy Shocks at $105 and it goes all the way down to 20. That's where I personally wouldn't really be going for it. And it'd be the same buying it kind of on this up market at 69 all the way up to 78. I then would be a little bit more ticked off if it dropped down to the 20. So it's all about what is your losses of kind of wanting this set. Are you trying to complete it as quick as possible, which potentially could make you a massive loss, or are you willing to wait, which I think is the smart deal? It is dropping, it's getting there. Whether you want to start with the Pokeballs now and potentially start collecting them, as I can imagine they're most definitely going down into the mud now. We can obviously see some Master Balls coming in really at the $2 to $5 market. I'd start collecting them more so than anything. They're going to be the best things to try and get as a nice little deal. If you can get it in a nice package, if you can get 20 Master Balls for an X amount of price, that would be personally where I'd be looking at to start this Prismatic journey. Getting your EXs, maybe getting a few of the trainer cards, as they are a little bit easier to get when it comes to kind of these sort of variants of them. They're a little bit easier to try and pull. Most people manage to get a couple of them. It's the SARs that really come in at them hard work, so they would possibly be last. It would go kind of your standard set, your EXs, maybe a couple of the trainers, Pokeballs, reverse hollows if you really want as well, Master Balls, and then the SARs, and starting cheapest to highest. But let me know what you're thinking about with Prismatic. It's an interesting dip. Whether it continues, we'll keep an eye on it. Peace.